Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled neighbor built an illegal water park on my abandoned property and claims that he owns the rights to my land. I ended up suing him and here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. My family for generations has lived in Bulgaria and I was the first generation to immigrate away. The thing is that the family farm has been in my name and sat unused for a good amount of time. I didn't want to run it or move back to Bulgaria, so I've just been kind of letting it sit while I figure out what the heck I want to do with it. When I had a break from work, I decided to travel back there to at least see the land and try and make some sort of plan for it. What I didn't expect was to see the land that had been built over and there was now a water park sitting on it. The other farms in the area were long gone and replaced with a small town. A town that was now having the benefit of the water park being on my land. The owner of the park was a guy named Ivan who owned the piece of land next to mine. Now, I had never given Ivan permission to use the land, so I was rightfully angry that he turned my family land into his amusement center. I found it extremely disrespectful and when I found him, I was already angry. There was no chance for me to get into this conversation, not going extremely volatile. Me, what did you do to my land? You ruined it. Ivan, whoa, I created something wonderful for the town. And to probably fill his pockets, I added in my mind. Me, I really don't care about why you built it. All I know is that it's on my property and I want it shut down now. Ivan, actually you haven't been here, so the land is mine through adverse possession. For those that don't speak legal terms, that means he was saying he was squatting on the land and was allowed to take it because I had left it. A law that I learned exists overseas, but under this situation in Bulgaria didn't actually exist. He was just throwing words around to try and scare me. He was not gonna shut it down, so I decided that I was just gonna have to make him. I filed a complaint against Ivan with the local police about him constructing the park illegally and that it shouldn't be in operation. They said they would send inspectors to the park to see what was going on. What they ended up finding was several health and safety violations and issues notices for Ivan to shut down the park. Warnings that Ivan flat out ignored and instead continued to operate it and refused to admit that I owned the land. Which for that complaint would take forever to get settled unless I pursued legal action more severe than a simple complaint. I not only made sure that the government was charging him criminally with stealing my land and illegal construction and refusal to shut down the illegal park, but also a civil case. I wanted him evicted off of my land and to gain the money that he profited for using it. It gets a little complicated when a criminal and civil case are kind of for the same thing, so I will try and break it down in a way that makes the most sense. For the eviction, Ivan was given several notices to leave the property and shut down his park. When he kept ignoring and refusing these orders, the government had to step in to shut the park down since it was dangerous for people. He did not even bother having insurance in the case of somebody getting hurt, it was an accident waiting to happen. But Ivan just didn't seem to care, until he was forced out of the property and it was locked so he couldn't get himself back in. He was also told that removal of the park he built would be done and he would be the one paying for it, and all profits gained from the park would be transferred to me. Luckily, he kept actual books on the place and they seemed legit, so the money was easily trackable. It wasn't a ton of money, but it was a nice amount that I didn't have before. Now, criminally, he was being charged with illegal construction, illegal possession of land, trespassing, and some other building thing that I forgot the name for. Basically building a knowingly unsafe structure with disregard for the safety and well-being of others. Ivan was not just gonna go down without trying to weasel his way out of this. First he was arguing that he did own the land, so he shouldn't have to pay me anything or get in trouble. I had court documents and others showing that I owned the land and was the legal owner on file. Even if he did make a verbal agreement with the previously deceased owner, my great uncle, it wouldn't be valid. Plus we all know that it never actually happened. He decided to try and maintain that the entire thing was just one giant misunderstanding. Somehow still coming off as arrogant instead of apologetic. Ivan, I had no idea there was anybody left in the family to own this property. He wasn't there and I assumed he knew about my past agreement. This entire thing is being blown out of proportion. I know that I did wrong and want to give him the land back, even though I technically did acquire it correctly using adverse possession. Which the court is refusing to even acknowledge. Yeah, insult the court, that's a smart idea. The judge then said, "We are well past that. You made 0 attempts to gain a deed for the land. You cannot acquire property under adverse possession in this country. The thing you will and are getting tried for is the theft of land. Plus I have here your past criminal history. Just because you came over the border doesn't mean that your past records just disappear. It turns out that he had a previous criminal history in Romania and that he didn't think would follow him down here. The history sounded very familiar, with acts of swindling and lying to people in order to gain land. Not a soul in that room was gonna believe his story of it being an accident when he had a clear history of doing this. He was found guilty on all charges and being sent to prison for the maximum of 5 years. The only reason for the maximum sentence was because he had a previous history of the behavior and also because he put lives in danger by not having the park be safe. This was a perfect example of a guy that just didn't care about the law and did whatever he wanted, thinking that nothing was gonna happen to him, and when it did, he would just move to a nearby country and start the entire thing again. I guess back in the day, it was harder for records to follow you and worked. Now in the modern day, it was not happening and Ivan was getting what he had coming for probably years. I got my land back without any issues, and as the court demanded, he paid for the park's destruction and I got a nice sum of money. What I also got was an idea about what I could do with the land. I didn't want to open a park or anything because I didn't want to move back to Bulgaria. I wanted to do something where I could go back home and stay there without worrying. I donated the land to the government to be used as a park, not a water park but just a normal park, green grass, a place for kids to run and play, etc. Something the small town could enjoy for free, while also ensuring that the land didn't get stolen again. I didn't care about the money being lost or anything, I just wanted the land to be used for something good, and I think my ancestors would agree I made the right choice. And the next one is a pro-revenge story, and it is an absolute XXL one, so please listen until the very end. I have worked quite a few part-time jobs over the years to help with the budget, some in bigger cities, some in smaller ones, but this story takes place in a large city where each neighborhood is actually a small town. The city is really a bunch of small towns that grew until they touched. This job was almost 20 years ago, so the dialogue is from memory. One part-time job was evenings and weekends at a liquor store with a drive-through beer, soda and wine lane. We could only sell beer and wine at the drive-thru. If a customer wanted liquor or more than a set amount of wine, he had to park and come inside. We could not carry liquor to the car for you either. The state had a lot of nitpicky rules like that, and I had just completed the mandatory training needed to sell alcohol, so the rules were fresh in my mind. The store had been in business for decades and the manager was the owner's slacker of a son. He was happy to bend or flat out break the laws regulating alcohol sales if it meant money for him. He didn't care if the consequences would be the problem of the person who rang them up. That did not impact him directly, so it did not matter. Manager had all sorts of special customers that were supposed to be treated a certain way that broke the regulations. I think the fine for selling liquor out of the drive-thru was more than the store earned in a year. I was a stickler for the rules, so if the manager wanted to break or bend the rules, he could do it. It wasn't like we got any reward for breaking the rules for manager's special customers. They had a hard time finding employees because the manager had a reputation in the area and few people wanted to work for him. So refusing to bend over backwards for manager's special customers was not gonna get me fired. No one told me that we had an unusual customer several afternoons during the week and twice on the weekends. This customer was abominable, rude, stinky, very prejudiced and sexist. He told the crudest jokes to the female employees and kept trying to insist that we go find a park with him, like we were ladies of the night or something. He was not just any cop, but the chief of police in a nearby section of the city. Most of the small cities within the larger city had their own police, fire, etc. And the first night I saw him, Cici, the co-worker and manager's niece, great person by the way, told me to just watch and stay quiet. She sold him 2 cases of beer and he went away. I noticed that his backseat area was filled to the point where you had no place to put your feet. She said to never say anything negative to him and to sell him whatever he wanted, no matter if he walked inside or not. She never gave me a clue as to why. A few weeks later I was working alone on a Sunday at about noon. Business was always slow at this time. The chief pulls into the drive-thru. Me, "Hi, how are you today? What can I get for you?" Chief, "I'm fine, and so are you. I need a bunch of stuff and it needs to go into the trunk." Me, "Let me grab a pencil and pad so you don't need to repeat it. Just a second." I grab them. "What all do you need?" The chief lists various types of beer, wine, liquor, mixers and some candy. Me, "Is that all?" Am I allowed to sell this to you through the drive-thru, or do you have to come in for the harder stuff? The chief got out of his car while it was sitting in the drive-thru lane. He walked up so close he loomed over me. Me, is that all? Am I allowed to sell this to you through the drive-thru, or do you have to come in for the harder stuff? Chief, do you think I would break the law? That I would never embarrass myself, my city, or the Marines this way? What the Marines had to do with anything, I still have no idea. Me, of course, I don't think that. I'm just asking because the state training was unclear about this. I guess it must be fine. After all, you're an officer of the law. Just promise me that if I make a mistake, it will stay between you and me. The training was not unclear, but I felt unsafe around him and didn't want to argue with him or make him even angrier. The chief said, "It better be fine. Stop backing up." He was walking forward towards me and he was very tall and imposing, not in a good way. "I need to see if you're recording anything. Put your arms out from your body, level with your shoulders. Well, I see you're not wearing a wire or a bra. Maybe I should open your shirt a little and have some fun, huh? I ought to take you back into that storeroom to have my fun with you. No one would ever know." Me, I'm so sorry, I don't think my father would approve. I'm only here on Sundays at this time because I can go to mass earlier. If I was single, I would be happy about it, but it would mean breaking one of the 10 commandments. The chief had a rosary hanging from his rearview mirror and Catholic decals on his official vehicle. By the way, Ripe Stars, that dude does not sound very Catholic to me. Anyway, it was a mostly Catholic area of the city and this was not unusual. I was scared of him and just saying anything to try to keep him away from me. I cannot tell you how imposing and awful this man was. I really thought he was gonna take me back to the storeroom and assault me. The chief said, "Well, it might be worth it. Be quick about getting my order and I will leave you alone this time. You should wear a bra that pushes you up when you know I'm coming by." I nodded at him and rushed to get what he wanted and to ring him up. I just wanted him gone at that point. I felt very scared but knew that we needed the income. I had to figure out a way not to be near the guy again and still keep my job. Cece came in to take over about 2 hours later. She could see that I was a mess and she wanted to know what happened. We had no customers, so I told her. The chief came in and wanted a ton of stuff. Cases of beer, lots of wine and hard liquor, mixers, all of it. He insisted on getting it through the drive-thru. I asked if that was okay because the training wasn't clear. He got out of his car and kept coming too close. Eventually he told me to stop moving after he backed me up into the wall. He said he had to pat me down to see if I was wearing a wire. It sure felt more like feeling me up. I was in tears and Cece was hugging me to help me calm down. She asked if that was all. Me, he said he should open my shirt for fun, that he should take me into the storeroom and no one would ever know. Cece said, "This is why we give him what he wants and we never question him. We don't want him to get out of the car because he tried this with everyone. He does not know that we have cameras everywhere now. No sound but cameras. I'm not sure what we can do about it, but I will think on it." I did not see Cece for over a week. Just how our schedules worked, I was really nervous when I was alone in the store. I didn't feel unsafe in the store until my experience with the chief of police. I started thinking about how to get rid of a chief of police. I did some research and found out that the cops in any other jurisdiction could pull him over and/or arrest him. Our neighborhood was announcing the summer festival season with lots of signs about drunk driving. Summer is when every local Catholic church has a big festival with games and rides and things. It's the big fundraiser for the church. Of course, the church festival would not be the same without tons of beer, at least not in this area. I walked over to the police station one day. It wasn't far. I asked an officer if they would be interested in pulling over a police officer from another district if the officer was clearly drinking. The officer, good cop, wanted to know more, but would definitely be interested in the situation. Me, I work at the drive-thru and liquor store. I have a customer that I'm afraid of and who breaks a number of laws. He is high-ranking in a different part of the city, not our neighborhood. I don't have warrants or a criminal record. I'm not accusing him to get out of trouble. Good cop, let's go in here and get some coffee and talk this out. Me, a couple of nights a week at a certain time and again during our slowest period on Saturdays and Sundays, a high-ranking cop drives through. He insists that he can buy as much of anything that he wants and he doesn't have to come inside for any reason. The first time I was alone when he came through, I asked if he needed to come inside to get the liquor and amount of wine that he wanted. I was not rude or mean, I even said that maybe I didn't understand the training and the loopholes in the laws. Good cop said, "Do you know that just being a cop doesn't mean the laws change for him?" Me, yes, but that isn't all he did. When I questioned him, he got out of the car and started backing me up against a wall. He put his hands all over me, supposedly to check for a wire, then he said he should take me into the back room for so-called fun. I'm really afraid he's going to sexually assault me. I cannot think of a way to stop it but to get him arrested for all the drunk driving he does. I won't make a complaint about this sexual assault, I cannot go through that. Good cop, what do you mean by all the drunk driving he does? Does he do it a lot? Me, he's always drinking when he drives through. Usually he has a beer in his hand when we get to him. I have seen him go through up to 3 beers if he has to wait for 1 or 2 other cars before we get to him. He never buys under a case of beer unless he buys whiskey with it. I named the whiskey he usually bought, but I cannot remember it now. His backseat area is filled with empties every time we see him. The beer he buys is usually put on the front seat next to him. He opens a can before he leaves, saying he wants to make sure it's good. The only time he has us put all of the beer in the trunk or backseat is if he orders a Coke. Then he orders whiskey and pours some of the Coke out to make room for the whiskey. Good cop says, "These are very serious allegations against someone you say is a high-ranking police officer. Are you sure you want to make them? You may be investigated if this goes to trial or disciplinary proceedings. Are you willing to go through that?" Me, I'm afraid that this man will assault me. I can't go through that. I will testify about his drinking and driving. I won't say or do anything about these sexual assault threats though. I just cannot go through that, so I need to stop before it happens. Good cop, what are you afraid we will find if we investigate you? What secrets are you afraid of us finding? Me, I'm a 30-something mother of 3 kids. I don't have a wild life. I've been happily married for over a decade. I haven't ever been in legal trouble. I don't drink, do drugs, go to orgies, or do any of those types of things. I'm not against social drinking, but I don't drink. I have some debt, but who doesn't? There isn't anything I can think of that you could dig up. Do what you have to do. Good cop, how can you prove what he does? You're not in the car with him. How do you think we can pull him over and arrest him? Me, he has a routine. He pulls in, drinks whatever beer he has with him, orders what he wants, and often asks me to throw away his recently emptied cans. 1 to 3 depending on how long the line is. Why he wants me to throw those cans away? I have no idea. His backseat is usually filled with empties. We give him whatever he orders because we don't want him to get out of the car. I'm not the only employee he has said awful things to. Once he pays, he turns right out of the parking lot. Then he turns left about a mile down. I know because I was headed the same way a few times. His car says he's from Summerview and that it's the chief's car. It even has his name painted on it. I don't know how old the empties in his car are. I do know though that I can set his beer cans aside if you need them for fingerprints or something. Anyway, good cop said, "Here's the chief of Summerview? Wait here, I need to get our chief." Don't go anywhere. I was expecting them to have to get the top officers involved. I didn't expect this sort of excitement. About 30 minutes later, the chief of police of my neighborhood came in. I know who he is because he married some cousin of mine, but I have never had any real relationship with him. We said hi to each other and made the usual "how's your family" stuff. For a moment or two, I had a lot of family in this area, way too much some days. Chief of police, I hear you have some info about the chief. Why are you coming to us with this? I said, he makes me feel very unsafe each time he comes through the drive-thru. He is also drinking every time I see him come in and leaves with a drink in his hand. I have kids and family in this neighborhood. He's gonna kill someone. He has been inappropriate with every female employee at the store. I feel threatened that if I don't sell whatever he wants in whatever amounts to him through the drive-thru, then he will get out of the car and at least threaten to assault me. I want you to do something about his drunk driving, so that he won't have a reason to come into our drive-thru several times a week. Chief of police, if I look into you, am I gonna find that you have a private relationship with him, or other things that would discredit you? Me? Of course not. I wouldn't go anywhere near the guy for any reason except that I have to be polite at work. Also, I'm married happily. Chief of police, from what you have said, this looks like an easy case of drunk driving. Especially if we can catch him with a lot of booze and empties on him. We would need to have someone in store for you to hand the empty cans to if we plan to use that as evidence. How comfortable would you be with an officer inside the store? Me, I would be fine with it as long as the officer was out of sight and out of uniform. If you're looking for empties, then Wednesday would be good. If you want to catch him in the car with a ton of alcohol, be there on Sunday about noon or Saturday about 2 to 3. I went through security tapes to find out when he usually comes by. You would probably have to talk to the manager after the fact to get those. Or talk to C. She is the one who really runs things here. Why are you all so excited over this? Chief of police, his behavior has caught the attention of quite a few people lately. I can't go into it, but we are very interested in him. I also don't like him. He hit on my wife at a function we had to attend. I left after writing and signing a statement. I didn't hear anything for several weeks and I was getting frustrated. The chief was still coming in, he was still drinking while driving, and he kept making awful comments to me. One Sunday, about 2 months after I made my statement, the chief came in and he ordered even more than his usual Sunday amount. Less than a minute after he left our parking lot, I heard sirens. A lot of them. I hoped they were arresting the chief, but I didn't know for sure. The next morning when I took the kids to school, all the moms were buzzing. Apparently, the chief got himself pulled over for driving while intoxicated. They found his beer, wine and hard liquor. They also found drugs, and this led them to search his home, where they found unregistered guns and information about other illegal things he was involved with. Corruption, illegal child videos, to name just a couple of things. I spoke to the chief of police a week or two later. I would not need to testify. They had plenty of other people who were willing to testify instead. The chief had become a real liability for those who backed him in his town. Many of his close friends ended up testifying against him to save their own behinds. The chief went to prison. I'm not sure where or how long, I just know that it was an ugly situation. The chief's wife also left him. The news made a huge deal of the whole mess, and I'm still thankful that my name was kept out of it. And yeah, Ripe Stars, this sounds like a really small town, and honestly, with such corrupt police, I would be really scared to make such a statement as OP did. However, then again, props to OP for bringing down this awful police chief. I hope he rots in prison for the rest of his life. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.